And I did this whole episode on Life After MLM about twin flame, and really the concerns that I had of this bad advice that they're giving, and a lot of stories that I had found in this group of people complaining, people talking about restraining orders and things that had happened to them. And I found all these stories. And so I did an episode on it about things that had concerned me just as a regular person who, I mean, I'm not super regular because I talk about this high demand control. So I see it more than others, but I was like, uh-oh, like this is not good. But yeah, we have some twin flame content coming up this year because I'm in talks with a couple of the survivors who are just right now, they're like, it's too fresh. And I was like, you let me know. You are in charge of when this goes. So we were just talking the other day actually about wanting to connect and do some, it was a wild documentary. Both of them. I think both of them are a good watch.
I do too. And they're kind of like a different perspective. The one was told more from like an investigative perspective versus the victim perspective.
Right.
And that's what I liked about it, because I thought it was just evident what was going on from both instead of one taking a different narrative. And when you put them together, it's like you see both sides. Do you think they know they're leading a cult?
I mean, I feel like you'd have to know. It's absolute control. Like, I just don't they will never admit it. No one that ever runs a cult's ever going to admit it. My dog just came in, bust the door open. Jeez, man.
Like, I'm here for my interview.
Yeah. Well, the other one always barks anytime I talk about Scientology. So we're lucky we have this one today. It's fine. It just happens every time. Hi, Spanky. You're so sweet. I think they know. I think they have to know. Like, how couldn't they know that what they're doing is controlling people and manipulating them, manipulating their emotions, giving them bad advice and taking their money and being like, yeah, well, you're a failure because you didn't do what I told you to do. The advice is dangerous.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that completely. I just sometimes wonder, and I'm not a cult expert. I'm not, I told you on your show, like I had interactions with a couple of MLM things over the years, always kind of like, it was weird because I would see family or friends behaving differently with it, which was the red flag for me. But I just sometimes wonder, I'm like, do they know, or is it just they get so far into it that they don't realize that they're the problem and that they're a cult leader? Like maybe they think I'm leading people, or maybe I'm Jesus or whatever that guy ended up thinking he was. Like, do they know they're the villain? Or are they one of those people that think they're a hero who's actually a villain to anyone on the outside looking in?
I don't think that they see themselves as villains. No.
Yeah.
But I also think that they have to have some sort of idea of what they're running, whether they want to call it a cult or not. Like, because there's a lot of negativity, obviously, with that word, so people don't want to be labeled a cult even when they are. I couldn't imagine being that deep into a belief system that you created and not thinking any of those things, even if you don't say them out loud. Like, are we running a cult? Am I a cult leader? Like, maybe that's my anxiety showing, but I was like, I would think about that stuff. I think about that stuff now. I think about that stuff now. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that I run like our Discord, or the way that I talk to my followers, I'm like, are we being culty? Like, and I'm very aware of that kind of stuff. And it's something I think about all the time, which is probably the good sign that it's not a cult. But you know what I mean? So,
well, that self-awareness is probably helpful to stop it from getting any kind of culty, I guess.
I think I wouldn't want to be I don't want that kind of responsibility. Like, to be perfectly honest, like, I don't want to be responsible for that many people. I'm just not interested. So I would never be a cult leader. It's just, it doesn't appeal to me at all. It seems like too much work.
It does seem like a lot of work. I will say that. And to just kind of always be bought into the bullshit. Like, I have a bullshit detector that goes off sometimes when there's no bullshit at all, just because I think there might be bullshit. But it is crazy to think like how people, and that's kind of, relate to back to reality TV. Like, I remember like coming out of it, I was very much like, okay, I'm like, this is my life now. Something good came out of it. Focus on that. Ignore the parts that were weird, or just don't even disassociate with them. Like, I didn't even think about them. Because I was grateful for the opportunity. Like, it's very strange, but then, I do wonder, I'm like, how can people just continue to have such big egos or whatever it is to just spew this nonsense and escalate it, right? And see people getting restraining orders or people spending their mortgages on more product and not have any remorse or any awareness. It's just like I'm trying to put myself in someone's shoes that's a cult leader, and I just can't do it. Like, I can't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. The few times that I was given the opportunity to go full cult leader, I was like, don't do that. No. So I know that I would never switch, like flip that switch like that. It's just not who I am. And I think
It's like
that's
the
why
Dark
it
Knight.
bothered me so much when I saw it in other people. And I was like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not how this kind of business is run. This is about customer service. What are you talking about? That's not how that's done.
Right.
You know, a lot of the reps would like shame people if there were holes in their leggings. They'll be like, oh, well, did you buy the wrong size? And I was like, ooh, we can't be saying that to people. It was
Oh
that
my-
kind of stuff. So it was very
What?
much
That
like
is-
everything was everyone else's fault.
It's so funny because you say that, and then I think back to the Twin Flames documentary, and what was it was like the mirror exercise or something, where it's like whatever you're feeling, you're projecting, so you got to say it back to yourself. That's the same kind of thing. It's like, oh, those were low key insults, like, oh, maybe, and then you sit there and like, maybe I should have bought another size bigger, and it's just like it's a low level manipulation right there. It's awful.
Yeah. So so basically what happened was I had been on other people's podcasts talking about LuLaRoe, and I had really enjoyed being on podcasts as a guest. And I had some friends who were doing sort of like a low key anti-MLM podcast, and I had been a guest, and they're like, it was so fun having you on. Would you like to co-host every now and then? You know, if we need a co-host. I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So I get all this stuff, right? I get all the mics and everything to be like, I'm going to do a podcast. This is so exciting. And I started even interviewing people. I was like, I interviewed people. We've got all this audio, like you can, whatever. And the other people were like, I got all this stuff going on in my life right now. Like I can't get to the audio to edit, and I can't come to that interview because I'm busy. And they had legit reasons, but I was so gung-ho. I was like, I had this hyper fixation. I was like, I want to do this. I want to have these conversations. Like, this is so healing to me. This is something that I want to do. And so I got this idea. I was like, why don't I just start my own? Like, why do I need to be a co-host or a guest? Why can't I just start my own show? I was, at the time I was a hairstylist, shut down by COVID. I was going through a divorce. I was living back at my mom's house because not making any money and going through a divorce equals where the hell am I going to live? So my daughter and I are living, and my mom had extra rooms, and she lived by herself. And so we lived there. So I didn't really, the privilege for me was that I didn't have to worry too much about the money that I wasn't making because I did have a roof over my head. But I didn't have a lot of stuff to do. So, I mean, honestly, I watched Tiger King, I watched Love is Blind, and I started a podcast. That's what I did. And I was like, let's just start this podcast. Let's just have conversations. And I would reach out to friends and followers and other people that I knew. And I said, do you want to talk to me about your time in this MLM or this MLM, or let's talk about LuLaRoe. And I just started having conversations. It was never meant to be something that would become my full time. It was never meant to be a job. It was just let's get through this year together and let's talk about all the stuff we're seeing on social media.